Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Tina Latifa Masood, your anchor for this event today. I am a writer, poet, blogger at large, and an anchor for over 31 years. It is my privilege to welcome all of you, ladies and gentlemen, the honorable awardee, the chief guest, the guest of honor, invited guests, family, friends, and well-wishers present here today to the 6th Yamin Hazarika Women of Substance Award for the year 2020. The award is instituted every year by a collective of women professionals in memory of Assam's first woman from the Northeast to join Central Police Service, Yamin Hazarika, who was DCP Delhi Police. The award recognizes and celebrates women who have made a notable contribution to the greater good of society. Yamin Hazarika, a single mother and a feminist, was the first woman from Northeast India to be selected for the NCT of Delhi, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Lakshadweep, Daman and Dadra and Nagar Haveli Police Service, that is DANIPS, a federal police service in India administering Delhi and Union territories in 1977. Yamin Hazarika succumbed to cancer in the year 1999, but her great trail of legacy lives today, inspiring millions, especially in the law enforcement sector. Ladies and gentlemen, our honorable guests present here today, before we start, may I request all of you to kindly put your microphones on the mute, because then when somebody is speaking, we will not disturb anyone. May I request all of you to put your mute position. Like I always say, please put your cell phones on the mute position, but here we have to say that we have to put the microphones on mute. Once again, I welcome all of you to this virtual award presentation ceremony. We will now present to you a slideshow to celebrate the spirit of America. Ladies and gentlemen, moving forward with our event today, I would now like to request renowned educationist and entrepreneur, Mrs. Nelly Ahmed, to present the welcome address.
Ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Nelly, why don't you please unmute yourself?
Yeah.
You'd have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Tinat. Thank you, Vikram. That was a wonderful slideshow
which he started day before yesterday, and he could complete it by this morning. And I think that was indeed very, very nicely put through. Ladies and gentlemen, our chief guest for the evening, Suhasini Haidar, diplomatic editor of The Hindu. Guest of honor, Bhaskar Jyoti Mahanta, DGP, Assam Police, and noted historian and author Rana Safvi, the recipient of this year's Yamin Hazarika Women of Substance Award. A very good welcome to Rana ma'am, and congratulations. I welcome you all to the 6th edition of the Yamin Hazarika Women of Substance Award 2020. And due to the unprecedented COVID-19 situation, we are having this award ceremony in a virtual mode, maintaining social distancing protocols. Today, we are celebrating the life of an extremely and extraordinarily woman, soft-spoken woman, who not only cleared her DANIPS NCT of Delhi, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Lakshadweep, Daman and Diu, and Dadar Nagar Haveli Police Station in 1977, but once selected, she proved to be a woman with a tough exterior, notwithstanding a certain softness to her. She was recognized for her impeccable track record in the forces and was honored with the Nirman Mahila Shiromani Awards. It was not long before that she rose to the position of the Deputy Commissioner of Police, Crime Against Women, a position in which she personified every aspect of feminine power. She was a consummate woman, a woman in every way, strong and determined, a strong, determined woman, a woman of steel. Historian Dr. Sheila Bora writes, at the time when Yamin Hazarika cleared her DANIPS in 1977-78, the women's rights movement was undergoing a period of resurgence. In the 1970s, for the first time, the discourse on women's issue in India began to focus on empowerment. This was the decade when public debates were initiated on the issue of women's status, domestic violence, trafficking, and the invisible labor of women in the household. Yamin Hazarika stood as an epitome of women at this particular time. Her appointments to crucial positions in the police department, together with her determination to fight all crimes against women, greatly helped the cause of women's empowerment. Her experience made her believe that women on the streets are safer than they are at home, as 50% of women, female children are abused by male members at home. Unfortunately, Yamin Hazarika met an early death in 1999 at the young age of 43. She was diagnosed with leukemia while she was posted in the UN peacekeeping force in Bosnia. Yamin Hazarika's life is an inspiration for all of us. She belongs to that group of feminists who not only were dependent on getting their due from the male-dominated society, she left her footprints in the sands of time for future generations to cherish. It's an honor and a privilege to welcome you all to today's event, commemorating her life and her contribution to building a stronger and a safer nation for the women of India. Thank you all for being here today. It's an honor to welcome you all once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelly Baido, for setting the tone for today's event. Thank you very much. May I now request renowned journalist and writer Teresa Rahman to speak about the award.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 6th edition of the Yamin Hazarika Women of Substance Award. The award was instituted in the year 2015 by a collective of women professionals. And it is no less than a miracle that a loose network of women from different walks of life, ranging from a banker, a psychiatrist, an economist, a pathologist, an academician, a dental surgeon, a poet, an entrepreneur, a journalist, an anthropologist, a student, and an author could pull through this event solely through their farsight and a wish to celebrate the life of an iconic woman, Yamin Hazarika. Yamin Hazarika broke many glass ceilings and paved the way for women in the generations ahead of her. The first edition of the award was held on July 24, 2015, which coincided with her 16th death anniversary. The first awardee was author and columnist Indrani Raimedhi. The following years honored women of substance from different fields. Athlete Toyabun Nisha for her contribution in the field of sports, actor Moloya Goswami, environmental activist Purnima Devi Burman, and social entrepreneur from Meghalaya, Hasina Kharbi. The year 1977 is significant. This was the year when a soft-spoken lady from the northeastern state of Assam cracked the civil services exam and packed her bags to join the male-dominated Delhi police. 1977 was also the year when the National Women's Conference was held in Houston, Texas. The three-day conference represents a turning point for the political history of second wave feminism in the United States of America. A number of controversial issues, including abortion rights and sexual orientation, were flashpoints in the event's program. The four-day conference in Texas was organized by the National Commission on the Observance of International Women's Year. The conference drew around 2,000 delegates, along with over 20,000 observers. Many people who were interested in feminism were at the conference to support women's rights. The inspiring author, Betty Friedan, attended the conference, along with feminist Gloria Steinem, anthropologist Margaret Mead, advocate for women in sports Billie King, and poet Maya Angelou. The Spirit of Houston, the official report of the conference, was submitted to President Jimmy Carter and the Congress in March 1978. The conference is also chronicled in a documentary film called Sisters of 77. Back home in Northeast India, this unique sisterhood of women professionals chose to honor Yamin Hazarika, on whose death in 1999, at the young age of 43, a leading national daily wrote, Delhi police loses one of its finest officers. A few years before her death, Yamin Hazarika, who was posted as Deputy Commissioner of Police, Crime Against Women's Cell, New Delhi, spoke about being a working mother in an interview to a national newspaper. She said, "While I manage to balance both aspects of my life, I do feel the scales tilt towards the office. And while this double duty is exhausting, I do enjoy every moment of the day. I only wish there were many more hours in it." We take pride in her indomitable spirit as we host the 6th award commemorating her memory. I thank everyone for being with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Teresa. May I request our guests present here to kindly put your microphones on the mute all the devices that you have, can you kindly put it on mute, because we have sounds which leak from your device and it becomes very disturbing for the speakers. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, the spirit of Yamin Hazarika lives within our hearts. And to reminisce this woman of substance, we have with us some of her friends and family. At the onset, may I request Mr. Monojit Borman, IT professional based in the US, to speak a few words. But before I hand over the microphone to him, I take this opportunity to introduce Borman. Mr. Manojit Burman is president, co-founder of Virus Inc., a technology startup company specialized in education transformation, based in Massachusetts, USA, technology leader with an innovative mindset. He has over 25 years of experience managing, coaching teams, advanced technology research and development, innovative enterprise software solutions, multinational companies across the globe. Currently, he's working as Vice President of Technology Architecture, Emerging Technologies, State Street Corporation, world's largest city bank, Boston, Massachusetts, USA. May I now request Mr. Manojit Burman, to kindly speak to the guests present here today.
Thank you, Madam. Distinguished guest, Trustee Maria Public School, ladies and gentlemen, good evening to everyone. It's my great pleasure to be virtually attending Yamin Hazarika Women's of Substance Award 2020. In fact, it's my honor to be participating in an event celebrating someone who has inspired lakhs and crores, I believe. Many distinguished speakers has already spoken about Yamin Hazarika, her work ethics, her dedication and passion towards women's rights. A well-deserved event. I hope this award will continue to honor more women of substance in future. As you said, I'm an engineer, entrepreneur, a technologist by intellectual passion and profession. But I always admiration for such an inspirational leader. Now, question is, how can we continue to move forward to her legacy and help the coming generation bear the fruits laid out by Yamin Hazarika? I know we are running tight on times, but just wanted to say a few lines supporting to continue her legacy. We are in an era very different than Yamin Hazarika used to be 20 years ago. Technology advancement has created spontaneous multi-communication channels that in a matter of seconds. If you look back, perhaps we have spent many decades to get women at the center stage of global agenda, giving voice to the voiceless. But we still do not know enough about inequalities and injustice women face every day. So I personally feel we need a way to make invisible visible, and that's the data. Collecting information about forced marriage, child labor, abuse, underpaid, unrecognized wages, etc., etc. In many cases, we are not even gathering the information that we needed to know the social, political, and legal challenges faced by women. Even when you do, sometimes it's kind of sketchy, out of date, or not being used properly. As long as women are invisible, benefits of development cannot be reached to them. As a result, millions do not have access to primary healthcare and get to go to school. Their contributions to the economy are mostly being ignored. While we know many women are abused, underpaid, denied basic things like identification, land ownership, bank account, just to name a few. Without good data, we are missing the crucial details to be able to change those things. We cannot see precisely what is needed to be fixed, whether solutions we are working or not, or what progress are we making to achieve gender equality. Hence, I believe data is the forefront of this knowledge gap that will open the world's eye to the vast disparities and discrimination faced by women in our society. But does data alone can fix the problem? No. Our country needs to design a program based on learning more about women's life and barrier that holds them back. Then only we will be able to help women reach to their full potential. I believe if we can do this, it will empower more women to transform their life, and what they do, it helps every one of us, families, communities, and countries. And just before I ending my piece, I just want to tell one more thing to bring to your attention about data-driven strategies. Back in July, I read about a study by McKinsey, a multinational company. Implementing gender equality in workplace would boost huge economic dividend in Asia Pacific region. It is almost $4.3 trillion over next 10 years, which is 12% more GDP in 2025 for Asian economics. I'm optimistic this kind of data-driven initiative would help reduce gender inequality much faster in coming years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Monojit Borman, for that very inspiring speech. Thank you so much, sir. And thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you.
May I now request the uncle of Yamin Hazarika, Mr. Asad Ahmed, to speak to the august audience.
Sir, please unmute yourself. Okay. Am I heard? Yes. Okay. Honorable Chief Guest, Suhasini Haidar, Guest of Honor, Bhaskaruti Mahanta, our awardees this evening, Srimati Rana Safvi, and all guests who have logged in this on this online meeting for the 6th Yamin Hazarika Women of Substance Award. Good evening to all of you. Over the next few minutes, I will be talking more on Yamin Hazarika's substance that she was, more than on Yamin Hazarika as per se. The award to many may sound a little different from the normal awards in the sense it's not been called the Yamin Hazarika Award, it's been called the Yamin Hazarika Women of Substance Award. So I'd like to dwell more on the substance that constitutes Yamin Hazarika. As an uncle, I've obviously known and observed her since her school days, college days, and finally maturing as a young adult to embark on her professional career. During her training period in the police academy in Punjab, she's made a few trips home to Guwahati. At that time by train to Calcutta and a flight the following day to Guwahati. And invariably, I used to help her during these stopovers as I was posted at that time in Calcutta. During these visits, I remember asking her, I said, do you have any concessions as a lady among men? She said, no way. I marched and I rode horses like any other man officer. Later, I used to visit her in Hoskas police quarters whenever my job took me to Delhi. A couple of times accompanied her with the children to the Delhi Gymkhana. She's led a very disciplined life, a routine which she meticulously followed, maintaining a very well-balanced equilibrium between her personal and professional life. I visited her once when she was in her sister's Shahin's Kolaba flat in Bombay while undergoing treatment at the Tata Memorial. Her fluffy hair was gone, but that smile, confident and mentally strong with the belief that she will make it through her ailment. That was the last I saw her. But fortunate enough, I managed to reach Delhi in time for her funeral when she was laid to rest at Nizamuddin. There's one instance which I'd like to share with everyone, which makes her the woman of substance. To put it in short, this was in 1991. She was DCP Crime Against Women cell. And this cell, incidentally, was the first women's police station, as it were, not only in Delhi, but in the country, which fulfilled a very important need for women's rights at that time. The National Commission for Women was only formed the following year, in 1992. Now, on one of my visits to Delhi, having a chat with Yamin, I found an air of a calmness, all right, but something I knew was worrying her. Although she never talked any official matters, we discussed everything else under the sun. At this time, she opened up. It was like this in short. While at the police station, there was a lady who rushed in, wanting to register an FIR against her husband for domestic violence. She gave a patient hearing, and she did what she had to do, is admit the FIR. Soon after, I believe she telephone call from a very important person, highly influential, a very senior bureaucrat, virtually ordering her not to register the FIR. Now, at this moment, she either could say, yes, sir. She could say, well, she could ponder mentally for a while. She could say, I could think over the matter. But she was very prompt in politely responding. What did she say? She said, sir, I've heard you, but please let me do my job, and you can do yours. Now, to take such a step, you need that mental strength, the guts to do it, the substance which the award carries with, mentions about. And quite obviously, something serious could have happened had it been in another country. Two words which even a child quotes these days: you're fired. And we know who uses these words very often: you're fired. But Yamin was lucky. She was transferred to a battalion. Now, a battalion is basically, a battalion posting is a cooling off period. But in course of time, she was back on her job as DCP, looking after 3 police stations. Now, when this kind of an instruction comes, she possibly knew what the repercussions could be. But she took the decision and she responded in a manner which probably her inner voice told her to do so. Her conscience. A word We in our school times used to hear it virtually daily, on a daily basis, but is hardly heard these days, conscience. Once she was back in DCP as DCP, as we know, she was followed up by even being selected as a part of the United Nations peacekeeping force in Bosnia. Unfortunately, that was a last posting, as it were. If only the Almighty had allowed her to live longer, she would possibly have risen to greater heights. A saying goes that if you have a compass, you cannot get lost in the sea. Well, if you use your conscience, which we all have, the inner voice, you can never get lost in life. Now, may this tribe of women, I call it a tribe because it's vanishing. May this tribe of women with substance, women with guts, women with a conscience thrive, especially in these testing times. Before I conclude, I would like to congratulate this year's awardee, Mrs. Rana Safvi, who incidentally also hails from a police family. And if I may share another bit of information on her, that she too had appeared for the central services, for a career in the central government. She cleared her preliminary exams and then decided not to proceed because her conscience said, please take the other path. Now, which path she took, I won't mention, but definitely it was for the better. And I'm sure she won't regret it. With these words, I'd like to say thank you to Women's Hub once again for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Asad Ahmed. We are indeed privileged by the gracious presence of the daughter of Yamin Hazarika, Huma Hazarika Sharma. Huma is an entrepreneur and a writer, and I would request her to speak now.
Hi, good evening. First of all, I'd like to start off by thanking all the wonderful women, part of Women's Hub, who made these awards possible year after year. A very big thank you to all of you, really. I'd like to thank Ms. Safvi for so graciously accepting this award. My mom was a history enthusiast, something that she passed down to me. And she'd be smiling at a choice of awardee this year. I'd like to thank Mr. Bhaskar Jyoti Mahanta for agreeing to be our guest of honor. It holds special significance, especially since you played such a pivotal role in shaping Virangana, which is perhaps the only elite force of women commandos in the country formed to protect women. Ms. Suhasini Haidar, thank you so much for gracing the event as the chief guest. I'm told you knew my mom back in the day, and I'm looking forward to an anecdote or two this evening. And last but certainly not the least, everyone who has taken out the time to be part of these awards. Hopefully by next year, this pandemic would be a thing of the past and we would be able to host them in real time once again. Okay, so my time with my mother was short, but observing how she lived her life, there are three things I learned from her that have bode me well in life. The first was, of course, that women can have it all, irrespective of whether we are married, single, seeing someone, following our dreams should never take a backseat. So my mother was a single mother to two kids who, God knows, were a handful. She always, however, made time for us while never neglecting her work. And she also found time to pursue other interests like hiking, horse riding, rafting, partaking in cultural programs. And it never made us feel the lack of money, even with her limited means. So the second thing I learned from her is pretty similar to the first. Never let anyone tell you what you can and cannot do. Do what feels right. sorry, I'm a little nervous, and do it irrespective of whether the world tells you you'll fail. I kid you not, I switched careers twice in the last 12 years and been through some 14 different jobs. Any HR person will tell you that's a recipe for disaster, but instead it helped me figure what it is. Oh my God, I'm so nervous, what I really wanted to do. And here I am years later, designing jewelry and writing. And every single job I've ever done has taught me important skills that has equipped me to do pretty much everything I need today. And of course, the third is never hesitate to help people. Always give back to society. So when we were kids, whether it was visiting an orphanage or tying rakhis to my pal bhaiya who used to work in a house, or going to Basanti, the lady who used to work in a house, her kids' birthday parties, or playing Uno or whatever, board games with the kids. My mom taught us to be gentle, to be kind, and to treat everyone fairly. Another instance I remember so well when I was a kid was when my mom, Auntie Nellie, and I were on our way to dinner when we found a person who'd met with an accident, lying in the middle of the road. Without wasting a second, the person was helped off the road and put into the backseat of the police ambassador. And we all scooped up in the front. And we all rushed into AIMS, where the doctors told us we got him right in the nick of time. So there's so many other fond memories of my mother that I took away in my short time with her. With these three things that she's taught me will stay with me for life, I guess. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Huma, for that very inspiring speech. Those words are going to stay in my heart forever. Thank you so much. And thank you for being with us.
Yeah.
We would like to heartily thank Vikram Hazarika Sharma, son of Yamin Hazarika, for his presence in our midst today. Vikram is an entrepreneur, writer, stylist. May I request you, Vikram, to speak a few words?
Thank you for the introduction. So I didn't get a lot of time to prepare like a long speech because I've not been keeping too well. But I would like to start off by thanking the Women's Hub for putting together this event in the middle of a pandemic, and for putting together like an event every year since 2015, and just making sure that my mother's legacy continues. I think through their work, my mother's legacy is continuing, and it's inspiring a lot of young people even today. My mother, 20, 30 years ago, she stood for principles of equality, gender sensitivity, feminism, which are things which are very relevant even today. And I think, yeah, it just makes me really happy that her work is continuing even like 20 years after she passed away. And yeah, like it gives me, I think, yeah, like I'm really happy about the fact that this award is pushing forward her legacy. And also I'd like to congratulate Rana Safvi on receiving the award this year. And I'd also like to thank the guests of honor, Mr. Bhaskar Jyoti Mahanta and Suhasini Heather for gracing us with their presence. Thank you.
Inath, ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about this. Ladies and gentlemen, today it is with a deep sense of pride that we would like to welcome the guest of honor of today's event, the DGP of Assam, Mr. Bhaskar Jyoti Mahanta, to speak to the august audience here today. But before that, I take this honor to introduce Mr. Mahanta. Mr. Bhaskar Jyoti Mahanta is from the 1988 IPS batch Assam Meghalaya Cadre. He has held responsible positions as the District Superintendent of Police, DIG, and additional DGP administration, and man in charge of anti-insurgency operations in Assam as IG, Law and Order. He was the Joint Secretary in Ministry of Heavy Industry and Government of India, where he was responsible for companies like BHEL and BNR. Both these companies made exceptional gains during the period of his responsibility. He was also the MD of Richardson and Crudis, another PSU, which made profits for the first time in 25 years during his tenure. He served as Special Director General of Police, Border, and additional charge as the Director, Fire and Emergency Services, Assam, with effect from 4th of February 2019 to 30th November 2019. He has since then taken charge as Director General on 11/12/2019. Mr. Bhaskar project Assam Police Project in association with UNICEF, and later in Assam. More than 1,200 such children of Assam have benefited from this project. This is also recognized as one of the best practices of Indian police by National Police Academy. He also created the Assam Police Rangers by dismantling PRC. He also and SOPs for all forces to operate. He is also involved in social re-engineering process through his NGO called Srimanta Foundation. He has directed several films and documentaries which had earned national and international awards. He has also co-authored and rights on contemporary socio-cultural issues. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to request all of you to kindly welcome, as I request Mr. Bhaskar Jyoti Mahanta to speak to the august audience here today. Mr. Bhaskar Jyoti Mahanta, DGP Assam.
Thank you, Dinat. Thank you, Teresa, for having invited me here. And thank you, folks, and respected Chief Guest, Suhasini Haider, the recipient of the award, such prestigious award in the name of such a wonderful, fantastic person like Yamin Baido, I used to call her those days. I had really met her for a brief while, way back in 1988, when I just joined Indian Information Service in New Delhi in Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. And I had a couple of batchmates around those times in the IPS, and we would like generally meet in the evenings and chat about Delhi police and things like that. And that's where I had learned about Yamin Hazarika. And she wasn't yet then a DCP, but then perhaps she was holding the post of an ACP or additional DCP, whatever. But then my heart really was feeling great, when I had an Assamese lady earning such great accolades from her colleagues and her juniors and people. And it was wonderful to hear about her. And I just met her for a very brief while, generally interacting, and she was also giving me very encouraging nods and but then I heard a great deal. And those days, since I was working and in collaboration with a lot of journalist friends, and I thought, why not write a piece about her? There used to be this magazine called the Sun magazine, and it used to be hugely popular amongst us youth there that time in New Delhi. This magazine was for the Northeasterners primarily, and I had written a piece on her. It was called The Delicate Assamese Tafi. I found her persona very delicate in the sense that she was being very soft and nice to people in general, but then she had wielded the baton as and when necessary, and that's what, and her reputation traveled far and wide as a very effective police officer, and her concern about crime against women was generally very, very respected among the police lot out there around those days. And great to be here amongst you all and listening more about her. Thank you, Asad Jaman, for giving us interesting insight into her psyche, the way, the kind of substance she used to possess, and wonderful to hear about more about her. And that reminds me of the great Assamese ladies, the wonderful heritage of the Assamese ladies doing contributing so much, right from Soti Sadhani, Mula Gavuru, and I would rather put her at par with those legends. Assamese women are respected a great deal. That's how, perhaps Yamin also had inherited a great legacy. They have witnessed enhanced empowerment through education, employment, knowledge, access, etc. But then of late, what we are noticing, because Yamin's soul would be greatly, I'm sure, happy, if she could find women in Assam also to be relatively better off in terms of being self-assertive, being independent, and being free. And by and large, the status of women, of course, in Assam is supposed to be great. But unfortunately, as per Crime in India 2018, NCRB, I'm a cop, so was Yamin. So I'm sure we can talk about issues pertaining to the women. So as per NCRB, National Crime Record Bureau, the number of cases registered in various police stations in Assam under the head Crime Against Women, it's a dismal number in terms of Assam holding sixth position in the country in terms of total number of cases reported against in the head Crime Against Women. But then we can take a little solace that after I have joined specially, I've gone around telling the people, police guys, to be, popularizing the concept of approaching the police. Make yourself very accessible to the women who approach you in distress. And we go out of our way of late to accommodate the problems of the women and women in distress. And we have asked them to register affairs, without batting an eyelid and not being too careful about increasing number of cases. And our people, I'm sure our women are of late getting much more empowered than before. They are much more emboldened to be approaching the police, and police is also getting to be much more accessible, I'd like to claim. The government of Assam and Assam police, we have taken many steps for prevention of crime against women. And we've been working closely with stakeholders for providing shelter, medical treatment, counseling services, free legal aid, and compensation. Awareness is being generated big time. And I'm sure you guys would be hearing a great deal about it of late. And Women Help Desk is in the process of being set up shortly in 200 police stations in Assam with a fund of 2 crore. We have already received the fund, and and we are at it pretty actively. A cyber forensic training lab would also be very shortly operational in CID. In fact, issues pertaining to women are intrinsically linked with those of kids, of the children. And we are taking very special care about the children as well. And in collaboration with organization like, one NGO called UTSA, I'm sure you must have heard the name Miguel. He is with us, and in collaboration with UNICEF, we are setting up this Assam Police Sisu Mitra Resource Center in the CID, and they will be working in collaboration with the police in all police stations. Whenever there is a case registered against a child, in respect of a child rather, crime against a child, then they would be guided. The investigating officer would be guided by way of providing suggestions from these experts who will be sitting manning this particular resource center. Similar plan is also afoot in respect of the women, if there is a women-related case, so that the police are sensitive to know the nuances of law that are required to be written. All these are being put. I hope I'm still around. Ladies and gentlemen, we have in Assam Police raised this outfit. In fact, Yamin Hazarika's life, and I'm sure her soul will be blessing us in this regard. We have raised this outfit called a Virangana. In fact, I was IZ training in armed police those days. Virangana was raised in order to fight the crimes against women. Basically, yeah, Yamin was a Virangana, all right, and it matches so much with the kind of personality that she used to have. Basically, the attitude, inculcating a particular kind of an attitude on the girls, the police girls that we have. Now I'm increasing the number of Viranganas. I'm closing them once again after I've joined as a DGP. I've found that well from the SOP that I had designed long back, the standard operating procedure. There has been certain deviations, and now I'm closing them And I'm increasing the number of the women commandos and then retraining them a great deal. Basic focus is to inculcate that attitude that I can, and I'm no lesser than anybody. The kind of a thought process I'm sure Yamin had entertained. And yes, we are very inspired by the great life that she had and the kind of contribution she had. I'm sure her spirit will continue to inspire us in the forces, and a great salute to her. And yes, we'll carry on doing what we are doing, and I'm sure Yamin will bless us. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bhaskar Jyoti Mahanta, respected DGP of Assam. We are truly, truly proud of you that you are leading us from the front. Thank you so much. And you make the city a much safer place, and you make Assam such a safe place. Thank you so much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we now come to the most important part of today's function, the award presentation ceremony. But before that, may I request renowned educationist Reshma Shah to do the honors of introducing the awardee of the 6th Yamin Hazarika Woman of Substance Award, Rana Safvi.
Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. In a recent interview, Rana Safvi was asked, "Do you think every monument has a hidden story within?" And her answer was, and I quote, "What we see as ruins or buildings, bricks and stones, once had people living in them, or in many cases, buried in them, with relatives and devotees visiting them. So, of course, each has a story to tell. We just need to look for them." This response gives us a glimpse into the life and works of Rana Safvi, this year's recipient of the Yamin Hazarika Woman of Substance Award. Rana Safvi has made it her mission to bring forgotten monuments back to life. When you read her books and accompany her on her virtual walks down the forgotten lanes, you are time traveling to catch a glimpse into the glorious past that has informed our present. You hear the murmur of the common man, the laughter of a beggar, and you can almost breathe in the rich aroma of Mughal cuisine. She brings the past to life. Born into a learned family that cherished liberal and progressive thoughts, Rana Safvi inherited a rich tradition of history, culture, and literature. She developed an eclectic taste and sensitivity that later blossomed into her passion for highlighting the syncretism of Indian culture. With a master's degree in medieval history from Aligarh Muslim University, the stage was set for her journey. A passionate believer in India's Ganga Jamuna Tehzeeb, Rana Safvi has devoted herself to researching and documenting the history behind the forgotten monuments through her writings, podcasts, and videos. She has published several books so far on culture, history, and monuments of India. These are tales from the Quran and Hadith, the Delhi trilogy, where stones speak, the forgotten cities of Delhi, and Shahjahanabad, the living city of Old Delhi. She has translated both the editions of Sir Syed Ahmed Khan's seminal work on Delhi and 4 accounts of 19th and 20th century Delhi from Urdu to English. She is also a regular contributor to various national newspapers and magazines. Her blog, Rana Safvi, is a rich repository of cultural, literary, and historical heritage. The contribution she has made to reawaken interest in our heritage is invaluable. One cannot but agree with her that to preserve the crumbling, beautiful monument and the lost traditional values, we must be invested in that culture and in that movement, that monument. Ladies and gentlemen, I on Women's Hub to present Rana Safvi. Thank you.
Thank you, Reshma. May I now request Huma Hazarika, who is already present there, to kindly present the salver to the awardee, Rana Safvi. Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention here. Here is Huma Hazarika Sharma presenting the silver salver, which has been specially designed for this particular event, to the awardee of the 6th Yamin Hazarika Women's Success Award, to Rana Safvi.
Thank you so much, Huma. Thank you. Such an honor, I can't tell you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for accepting the award, and heartiest congratulations to you. May I now request Rana Safvi to present her speech.
Great honor for me to be the recipient of this year's Yamin Hazarika Woman of Substance Award. To be called a woman of substance in the name of a woman who was such an icon, such a great woman, and really indeed a woman of substance is something which is very, very humbling for me. And I just aim to be worthy of this award, and I hope I can be. Yamin symbolizes the ideal woman of substance all the way. And from whatever I have heard, her uncle speak, her daughter, her children, her friends, whoever has spoken about her, has described her as somebody, an ideal that people can strive for. A woman of substance means somebody who has a positive influence on people around her. And Yamin has had that in plenty. When the award was announced on Twitter and on social media, I got so many messages from people who had studied with her, telling me that Yamin was my class fellow in IP college, or that they had known Yamin when they were younger. And each one of them had such glowing things to speak about her. I'm just sad that I couldn't meet her, or I didn't know her personally. Yamin's friends speak of a very soft-spoken woman with a steel spine who achieved so much in a life that was tragically cut short. And as more and more women come into public life and face challenges, it is important to remember that it is our own inner strength and value that matter and make us a woman of substance. Don't let the pressures of patriarchy, societal demands, and expectations of your peers and friends and family get you down. Every woman has her own niche in life and is perfect in her own way. Don't let ideals or what society thinks a woman is supposed to be ever get in the way of what you want. Ultimately, it is you who are answerable only to yourself. It's your mental health and happiness that matters, not anybody else's. So don't let any kind of harassment or exploitation, whether in the workplace or in the home, ever come in your way. Yamin and I would actually approximately be the same age. And when we were growing up, these terms were not used so frequently. I remember a book called A Woman of Substance. I think I was in college at that time, but these were terms which are now being more and more discussed, but they weren't then. At that time, women just quietly went along doing their thing, and they achieved great things. My mother had been one such. She was the first girl in the family to do her post-graduation from AMU in 1948. She had taken up teaching late in life, and at age 60 decided that if she wanted to teach, she must train for it. So off she went to Chennai to do one module of a distance learning class, an exam for B.Ed from Annamalai University. She had a heart condition, a host of broken bones, and I was barely 30 at that time. She was 60, and 60 seemed very old. It doesn't now. And so we kept on fretting, and she said nothing will happen to me. She was very confident of what she was doing. It's her passion for work, which I have inherited also. Today, the boot is on the other leg. I am party, and my daughter is in her 30s. And she thinks that I take risks. I feel I am enjoying in adventures. There are many times when she frets about me and she keeps messaging me, stay safe. And I wonder why is she worrying about me? But there was a time when I did worry about my mother too. To come back to my life, as Yamin's uncle had already said, I was never very focused or very ambitious when I was young. I was excellent in studies. I prepared for UPSC. I passed the prelims. I had actually already prepared for the mains, and I was quite confident I would have gotten also. And my father was an IPS officer. In fact, Yamin's life matches his very closely because he was also one of those very honest, upright officers who never let anything stand in the way of his principles. So he kept getting transferred, but he didn't mind. He used to say at the end of it, I sleep well and I have a clear conscience. So I prefer to let everything go for a life of domesticity. And while my friends sat for and qualified for competitive exams, I was happy raising a family and teaching in a school. It is only much later when my children grew up and I became an empty nester that I started feeling that there's a vacuum in my life. In 2004, I lost my mother to cancer, and it was a very painful death. She was and is still my first role model. She had lived life very much on her own terms and had been a trailblazer all the way. When she was diagnosed with cancer, it was already in the last stages. She was operated upon, something which she took in her stride. And I remember the day after her operation, when we went to meet her, she was getting her hair combed and told the nurse, please make me look pretty. My daughters should not worry about me. Her only plea was that let me die in peace with my dignity intact. I have had a wonderful life. Don't let this last years be spent in anticipation of my death with everybody looking sad and tragic. Let these last years be spent in a celebration of my life. She taught us that cowards die many times before their death. The brave die but once. She made those last 2 years a joyful experience for her family and her friends, and of course her daughters. When the doctor told us that she was now in the last lap and she just had a few months left, she was with us, her daughters, as she had wanted. She kept, as long as she was conscious, she would keep telling us, stay together, support each other, and to let her go peacefully. In her own words, in a letter which she left behind for us, she said, when they raised the bar to put me out to sea, don't mourn. You have been the best daughters that anybody could have had, and you have made me proud. In the last month, when the pain was excruciating and she would lie in her bed like a wounded gazelle, her big eyes, beautiful eyes, glazed with pain, refusing to moan or cry. In 2004, on 20th of June, she left this world very quietly with immense dignity, leaving behind grieving daughters, sisters, brothers, and grandchildren. In her death, she taught me the final lesson, that mothers don't die, they live in our hearts forever. As I say this, I can feel Huma and Vikram's pain at having lost their mother. Of course, much, much too early. I was still grown up. They were very young. And I admire the way that they have lived their life according to their mother's ideals and principles and are keeping her memory alive. I went back to Saudi Arabia, where my husband was posted, and I was teaching in an Indian school. I was grieving, and suddenly one day, there was a blank sheet of paper in front of me and a pen, and I started writing. I just kept writing. It was a tribute that I wrote to her and my father. And that is the day I learned that words can heal. I kept writing on and off, but it wasn't something I took up seriously. We left Saudi Arabia and came to Bahrain. I was by now 50 and spending my time window shopping, watching non-stop movies, serials, and generally feeling lonely because my husband was away on business and my children were in India. Many women give into depression at this age. I started feeling that my life was slipping out of my hands and I was unable to hold on to it. I remembered my mother. I remembered her strength. And I started discovering that same strength within me. I discovered Twitter in 2009 and started posting Urdu verses and history trivia. I started #Shire, a post for lovers on Twitter, and that proved to be a turning point in my life. I was asked to write for a few magazines. And this was the start of my career. Like Amma, I started late. In 2013, I decided to write a book in Delhi and decided to just pack up and leave from Dubai. My husband continued staying there. I packed up everything in the house, put it into a container, and shifted to Noida, where we had a house. Since then, there has been no looking back. By the grace of God, I have published 7 books and have been writing for innumerable magazines and newspapers. And I would like to thank Kunal Majumdar, who gave me my first break as a columnist, V. Kartika and Aparna Jain, who helped me publish my first book in HarperCollins. It hasn't been easy. And at an age when my friends are relaxing and playing with grandchildren, I work around the clock, reading, researching, writing. And since I do a lot of field work, many a times taking painkillers because my body isn't now geared up to be going up and down monuments like that of a teenager, but I still do that. The only reason I mention all this is because I want to tell women my age, it's never too late. If for whatever reasons you didn't do what you wanted to when you were young, do it now. Use your skills, use your voice. I didn't ask for it, but somewhere along the line, I have no idea how, except that God has been kind, I developed a social media presence. With influence comes great responsibility to use that voice for the good of society and take a stand on things that matter. Yamin was posted as Deputy Commissioner of Police, Crimes Against Women Cell in the capital. And since then, crimes against women have just been rising. In fact, more and more women are now coming out. We are also more aware of what constitutes crimes against women. So many things which we are told are okay are not. Fight against casual misogyny, fight against patriarchy, fight against any harassment or exploitation of any woman that you know or of yourself. Form a support team. Make use of whatever influence you have, voice that you have, and say what you think, say what you believe in, and argue against what you don't. I wouldn't advise young girls listening to me to leave it too late as I did, but to those who did, I say it's never too late. Never give up. You can do anything. Just set your heart and have a passion for it. Just believe in yourself and don't let anyone bring you down. There are always people waiting to undermine you. Find a support system. I have found mine. Whenever I am low, I talk to my husband, my daughter, my son, my sisters. I had that my girl gang from school, Zeba, Nahid, Sunandita, Nuzhat, Nina, Shiba, you all, Manju, Mangala, you all are there and have always been from there, for me from ever. It's 50 years of friendship that we celebrate now. I've made some many special friends along the way also. Anuradha, Anshu as I call her, she's here. Icon herself, in DCP in Bhopal, always there for me. And of late, I've made 3 friends who have helped me in my work professionally whenever I have needed it and whenever I have been low, have given me the confidence. Mani Mugda, Ira, and Roshna. Thank you for being there for me always. Please find that support system. It's very important. I love you all. I know so many of my friends who are here today. Hina, Dipali, Asma, all of you who are here. Thank you so much. Salik, Tariq, Naz, thank you. My maternal and paternal families have always been there for me. My teachers, my school and university have given me a lot of support, apart from giving me a world-class education, and I thank them. And thank you, Huma, for coming all the way to give me the award. I aim to be worthy of that honor. Thank you to the collective of women professionals who are behind the award and Yamin Hazarika's family for considering me worthy of this honor. In particular, I would like to thank a woman of substance I greatly admire, Teresa Rahman. Thank you, Teresa, for being you. I thank Suhasini Haider, diplomatic editor of The Hindu, and Mr. Mahanta, DGP Assam Police, for taking out time from their busy schedule to be here. Thank you, all the friends who have joined. And if I have missed out anybody's name, it is because I'm a little nervous. Amma and Baba, this is for you. and for the lifelong values that you gave us, which have stood us in good stead. And above all, you taught us to be true to ourselves and our core values. It's easy to get swayed by laws of fame and money, but think of what you're doing. Think of the effect of your actions on the marginalized sections of society, on society itself, the future generations, and how you would like people to remember you. I leave you all with a verse from the last Mughal emperor, Bahadur Shah Zafar, which I love. Zafar, आदमी उसको ना जानिएगा हो वो कितना ही साहिब फहम ज़का. Zafar, आदमी उसको ना जानिएगा होगा वो कितना ही साहिब फहम ज़का. जिसे ऐश में याद खुदा न रहे, जिसे तैश में खौफ खुदा न रहा. O Zafar, don't consider that man a human, no matter how great be his understanding and virtues. One who didn't think of God when he is enjoying the pleasures of life, and one who doesn't fear God when ablaze with anger. Thank you so much for this great honor.
Thank you very much, Rana Safvi, ma'am, for that beautiful speech. These words are going to remain in our hearts forever. And from the Women's Collective, we'd like to thank you for accepting the award and congratulations once again. Thank you, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, our chief guest for today's event is Suhasini Haidar. Before I request her to speak, I take the privilege to introduce her. Suhasini Haidar is the diplomatic editor of The Hindu, one of India's oldest and most respected national dailies, regularly writing on foreign policy issues. Prior to this, Suhasini was Foreign Affairs editor and prime-time anchor for India's leading 24-hour English news channel, CNN IBN, from 2005 to 2014, where she presented the signature show, World View with Suhasini Haidar. She was also the correspondent for CNN International's New Delhi bureau before that. In 2015, she was the recipient of the most prestigious Indian print journalism Prem Bhatia Award and has won a series of awards for her work in television as well. Over the course of a 20-year reporting career, Suhasini has covered the most challenging stories and conflicts from the most diverse regions, including Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Libya, Lebanon, and Syria. In India, she has covered the foreign affairs beats for over a decade, and her domestic assignments include political profiles and in-depth reportage from conflict zones, including Kashmir, where she was injured in a bomb blast in 2000. Suhasini Haidar worked with CNN International from 1995 to 2005, regularly reporting from India, Pakistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. She was part of the CNN team that won the Columbia DuPont Broadcast Journalism Award in 2005 for coverage of the tsunami in India and worked for CNN.com in New York for a month during its 9/11 coverage. Ma'am Suhasini Haidar, may I request you to kindly speak to the August audience here today.
Thank you so much. And really at the end of a ceremony like this one, where one can't help but be touched by the words of everyone who has spoken so far, whether it is Yamin Hazarika's family, whether it is distinguished guests, her mentors, as well as Rana herself, the recipient of the award. So I'm not sure that there is that much I can add, but I do want to say that the moment Teresa suggested that I could join you all on today's event, Yamin Hazarika's face, and I'm sorry, I know I'm not pronouncing it right, but her face really flashed in front of me, and I said, oh, I know her. I should have been more clear. I didn't actually know her, but I did. I was in contact with her, and I will tell you about that as well. The reason I said I knew her is because as a young girl in school in Delhi, you couldn't but remember that face. She was seen as, a sort of brash new generation of officers, somebody who just represented such a rarity that it was something that people would talk about. And I think on your website, on your Facebook site, there is a clip which shows her doing an interview. And for some reason, and I'm talking now, 30, 40 years ago, I can remember watching her on TV. I'm not sure what the issue was. So that was when I was in school. And of course, she was this gutsy ACP and the anti-Sikh riots that followed the assassination of the Prime Minister in 1984. In later years, when I became a journalist, I started work at CNN International in 1995. And it must have been in one of the years that followed. The story of dowry deaths became this big issue, and we went to cover it. And it was really one of the first stories I remember doing. And in fact, I should have updated my CV. It's no longer 20 years in the career. It's now more than 25. So you go through a lot of stories as a journalist in different roles, but you always remember your first few stories. And this is why the story I did about dowry deaths that then led to a series we did on crime against women really came about. It is not possible not to be inspired by women like Yamin Hazarika because of what she was able to achieve and what she meant. Obviously, at that time, there were names to reckon with. There was, of course, Kiran Bedi, there was Kanchan Chaudhary, Bhattacharya, there was Kanwaljit Deol, there was Vimla Mehra, and then there was Yamin Hazarika. And she stood out, I think, because she had this glow on her face always, and she had this very, very youthful, young look. And the idea that if someone like her could be who she was, then all of us as young women could aspire to be whatever we wanted to be. I think it was Ved Marwa who originally advised setting up the Crime Against Women cell. It came to mean a lot. There are things that we take for granted. In the 80s, and the 90s, in my years when I was taking public transport, and in those days it didn't mean the metro where there are cameras everywhere, and where people today are much more aware of what they will allow anyone to get away with. As a school and college student, there were two resounding themes that used to confront any young woman who was growing up. And one of them was something called Eve teasing. And I'm not sure the younger people in this group actually even realized what that meant. And the other was, of course, dowry deaths. Both left an indelible mark. The idea that these were the themes, these were the narratives they spoke about. So when I set out to do this story, I think Yamin Hazarika was the DCP for crime against women at that time, I think in IP Estate. And everyone said to me, that's who you need to speak to. But she didn't want to speak to me. So I ended up having to really make do with a conversation with her, somehow or the other getting her on the telephone after many tries. And the first thing she said was, don't come here. Go and meet the women that have been affected. And what was unusual, and I think Mr. Mahanta also spoke about, how NGOs work with the police. What was unusual at the time is she actually put me in touch with NGOs and told me where to go, where to meet women, go to the Patiala court, where these families, it was tragic at the time. You would see fathers and mothers sitting outside the court, and they had nothing left of their daughters because their daughters had been burned to death. And they had these photo albums. And it's hard to describe now, but there were so many of them at the time because these were the cases and people had this idea that the dowry laws were not really working. But I think I can say so many years later that the stringency of the laws and the tough way in which women like Yamin Hazarika ensured that they were implemented actually have made a difference over time. So one of the things she said is, don't come here, don't come and speak to the police, go and speak to the women who are affected. The other, she spoke about the importance of NGOs that were working with women. The third thing I remember was her talking about the real change needing to be made in the way women see a police station. The idea that women just are never going to be comfortable to go themselves to a police station. And so therefore the police station must seem like a much more, much more safe place for a woman to go to. One of the ways is, of course, to have more women officers there. but the other was to give that sense of strength. And, you know, one of the big things that happened in those days, today, I think it's a mass movement in terms of self-defense, but one of the big things the police started doing in those days was to ensure that women got self-defense classes. And again, one of the things that she did speak about publicly was the idea, and she was this frail thing after all, but the idea that women didn't take fitness seriously enough. That physical strength or confidence, physical confidence wasn't taken seriously enough. And therefore these classes that they had set up in the 90s, which were these self-defense classes, essentially judo karate, but you know, the way to teach young girls how to defend themselves, those left a huge indelible mark. And the reason I'm remembering all of this is because, of course, they made the best television as well to speak to these young women who had felt empowered. So when you come to it, when you come to the idea that, you know, here is somebody who just conjured up this, not just photograph of her, but all these memories as soon as Teresa mentioned her, I thought about what it is that, you know, makes people memorable, what makes people the kind of people that, you know, so many years later, we are all coming together to remember, to go through her life. Uncle Mr. Zaman had such lovely stories to tell about her, Mr. Mahanta as well. And I think that the real difference, and this comes through, is the values that we share. One is the importance that one puts on having women role models, women leaders who are also role models for us all. It's not enough for women per se, just, you know, to get through their own struggles in life, actually. It is very necessary that they show leadership. And be role models, not just to other women, but to men as well, because it's important to see those women at the top, not just struggling, but, you know, thriving. The importance of encouraging and enabling women in the workforce. You know, anyone who's been in the field, and that is any field, and, you know, Teresa and I are journalists, but any other field that people have been in will tell you that the single biggest game changer, if you go to a village and you say, why does this village do better than the neighboring village? The single biggest game changer today, and I'm not just talking about India, but yes, I mean particularly for India, is the education of the girl child. The assurance that she will be able to finish school and then look for opportunities to go to college, and then whether she's married or not, is enabled and encouraged to continue her work even through motherhood. I think that is the single biggest game changer, and in a sense that becomes a value that we cherish, that becomes a part of the memorability. The value of integration. In a country as diverse as ours, in a country that represents so many ethos, so many faiths, so many ethnicities, so many different religions, languages, cuisine, and all the rest, it is necessary to celebrate, in a sense, this diversity as well as the integration required to feel an Indian, to feel a part of this country, no matter where you come from and no matter where you are. And I think this is something that Yamin Hazarika brought through very beautifully in her own life, in her choice, in her marriage, the way she's brought up her children, whom I was so happy to hear them speak today. The fact that she represented the Northeast, but the fact that she made such a name for herself right in the center in Delhi. You know, the value of this kind of integration and the celebration of diversity is another very, very major value. The rest, of course, and this has come through from the speeches and everything people know about her, is fearlessness no matter what. Compassion in the work you do, no matter what. Even if you are a police official, the compassion is actually what differentiates you from everyone else. And finally, the dignity and grace with which one lives one's life. I'm glad that this award has gone to Rana Safvi, someone who does embody these values that I've spoken about. The world has changed quite a lot since Yamin was around, and she may have had to deal with, you know, lathis and protests and riotous situations, but Rana deals with some very, very tough bricks and takes them all on the chin in terms of what we see on the internet, the trolling. And yet she comes through with these amazing books and these columns that we follow so closely, particularly, I think, those of us who are in Delhi, but anyone who has a love for history and the monuments we see around us. And Rana does it all with the same dignity and grace that we spoke about. So I'd just like to end there and thank you all for inviting me, and thank you all for, not just bringing together all these memories this evening, but for celebrating all of the values that I was speaking about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suhasini ma'am, for that very, very encouraging and very inspiring speech. We're going to keep those words in our heart forever. And thank you on behalf of Women Collective, I'd like to thank you for accepting to be the chief guest and being here and talking to us in such a wonderful manner. Thank you so much, ma'am. And as we come to the end of our program, we are almost closing up. But then before that, may I request Dr. Shabnam Chaudhary, who's a dental surgeon, to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Gratitude glitters like gold when time makes memories everlasting. On an occasion of such great magnitude, thank you is all that takes to express gratitude infinitely. It is my proud privilege to propose the vote of thanks to this august gathering. Although COVID seems to have taken over the world, but thankfully that could not deter our spirits. And here we are at the end of the 6th Yamin Hazarika Woman of Substance Award. Firstly, let me take this opportunity to extend my heartfelt congratulations to the awardee, Rana Safvi Madam, historian and author. Madam, you truly deserve the award. It was wonderful listening to you. And here's wishing you many more in the years to come. This award ceremony has become very special by the presence of our chief guest, Suhasini Haidar, diplomatic editor, Hindu. Thank you very much, madam. We are indeed greatly honored by your graceful presence. It was great listening to you. My sincere gratitude goes to our guest of honor, Mr. Bhaskar Jyoti Mahanta, DGP Assam, for sparing time from your busy schedule to grace the occasion. Today we got an opportunity to hear you and your thoughts, and this will surely encourage us in our future events. My sincere thanks to Tina Tatifa Masood, our host, for beautifully moderating the event throughout. Needless to mention how wonderfully you kept everyone engaged till the end. My wholehearted gratitude goes to Monojit Burman, IT professional from Boston University, USA, for the live streaming for the event. Without your support, this event would not have been possible. So thank you, sir. A special thanks to Mr. Deepjyoti Datta and Mr. Chow Thaumong Yatet, technical team from Maria's Public School, for their ceaseless efforts in making the event happen and run smoothly. I extend a really hearty vote of thanks to all the family members of Yamin Hazarika for their cooperation. And a special one goes to Vikram Hazarika Sharma for beautifully preparing the slideshow and giving us an insight into the life of Yamin Hazarika. I would also like to thank two bright young ladies, Nasima Parveen Aman and Pakiza Khatun, for their tireless efforts to coordinate the event. Thanks also goes to Dr. Sabreen Ahmed, Faculty of English, Nagaon College, for being the rapporteur. I would also like to extend my gratitude to my co-coordinators, Nelly Ahmed Tanveer, Teresa Rahman, Dr. Nahid Islam, Reshma NC Shah, and each and every member of the collective of women professionals. If it wasn't for the team effort, we would not have been able to come this far. Gratitude is also due to all the dignitaries and well-wishers who are here with us to encourage us and our initiative to celebrate this woman of substance, Yamin Hazarika. Last but not the least, a big thanks to the esteemed audience for sitting through the event. Your presence today in the event has immensely enhanced the importance and turning this event into a success. Thank you, one and all, and have a pleasant evening.
Thank you, Shabnam. Dr. Shabnam, may I request everyone to kindly rise for the national anthem now? Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a pleasant evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Suhasini, for those very kind words. And thank you, the Women Collective. Thank you to the family of Yamin Hazarika for this honor. And I can't express myself. Thank you, everybody, all the friends who came today.